Hello, welcome. A lot of you guys have asked me to do a support company tier list, and I figured I might as well. So we're gonna do one using Tier Maker. I set this one up, so I think you guys could go through and make your own. If you just search for it, I'm pretty certain you could find it. But anyways, let's just get into it. We're gonna start with the two that are guaranteed to be S tier. AA. A single support company AA, level 1 AA, will reduce enemy cast damage by 67%. That is the most you can reduce cast damage by. You'll also reduce the enemy air superiority bonus by 8.3%, which if you're contesting air guarantees they're just not going to have a support bonus. So just really, really strong. Basically every disaster save you're ever going to see, the person didn't build any AA. Going up against an enemy that doesn't have an air force, you should be putting AA, even if you expect to have green air. And then the other one, support artillery. Support artillery is the most cost-effective source of soft attack in the game, bar none. It just is. And soft attack is just very important. From there, I think we'll do the recon. So we've got cavalry recon, which is just garbage. It's worthless. It provides the least amount of stats. It can't keep up with anything faster than cavalry, so you can't use it with your tanks or anything. Recon in general is just a useless stat on the offensive. On the defensive, it's okay, but then it's just not very good. And then Armored Car Recon, I'm going to put it a little bit higher, I think. I think I'm going to put it in D tier. At least it provides the highest amount of recon. There's one very specific use for Armored Car Recon, and that is if you're playing defensively with tanks and you're trying to counter the enemy's tactics. You want the highest amount of recon possible, and then you can select tactics in the officer core. If you come in here, you can select the counter tactic. So if you expect them to be using breakthrough and you have the counter to breakthrough, you can select that plus have armored recon, and that's just going to maximize your chance of countering the enemy's tactics, but overall it's just not that good. I'm going to put motorized recon here. At least it gives them biggest movement speed bonuses. It's quite nice. I mean, this might be worth a D tier still. It's still quite niche. I mean, speed doesn't matter that much. Actually, yes, I've talked myself into it. It's a little bit of a speed bonus. It's relatively cheap. You're likely to have excess support equipment and trucks. So, I mean, you could throw it in if you got an extra slot, but there's just better picks. And then you've got light tank recon. I'm going to put this in B tier. You can get a decent amount of stats on light tank recon. If you're trying to do the thing where you meme the AI and you have unpierceable infantry, you can still do that for decently cheap. For a 20 with division, you can get light tank recon, engineers, artillery, AA, and then all you need to prevent yourself from getting pierced, as long as you can get 30.2 armor on it. That's all you need. That gives you 5.3. That's good enough. The AI is not really going to pierce that. If you really wanted to get over 10, you can. It's really expensive. You can get up to 10 if you want to. I don't really think that's worth it. The AI really doesn't bring more than 5 piercing most of the time. And if it's bringing more than 5 piercing, it's bringing more than 10 too, because it's bringing AA, and that's going to bring you up to 16. You're not really going to be able to do that, but you can still do cheap tanks. I mean, you can make this a lot cheaper if you're just doing it for the armor. You're going to lose out on a bit of breakthrough and whatnot, but you can go all the way down to about 4.8 IC. If you're just caring about the armor, you're not caring about the breakthrough it's giving, or really the soft attack or hard attack. I mean, we're looking at about 120 IC per division, and you're just getting a 50% reduction to the damage you're taking and a 40% increase to the damage you're dealing. Most of the time. This is going to work through 1942, but after 1942 is not really going to work. It's B tier. It's not something you're going to put in every division. It's more circumstantial than that, but it is something you can do. Engineers. I don't know if I want to put these in A tier or S tier. I put engineers in basically every division. If we come in here, engineers provide a lot of percent bonuses, both defensively and offensively. Attack and defense in forts, attack and defense across the river, amphibious attack, defense in forests, defense in jungles, defense in marshes. Those are all amazing. Plus, it gives 9 entrenchment in 1942. And on its own, it gives you 30 defense. Engineers are just amazing. They're expensive, don't get me wrong. They're expensive if you're a very poor nation. You're definitely going to probably want to go in this order, or maybe this order, depending on if you're going up against air, but engineers are still very good. Field hospitals are garbage. Yes, at the 1945 level, you basically double your manpower pool with field hospitals. It doesn't matter. Every instance where you need manpower, you can just get it elsewhere. Two things that are likely true. You're either playing a country that is so poor you can't afford field hospitals, and that's also paired with the fact that you have no manpower, or you're playing a country that's rich, but they don't have a lot of manpower, in which case just build light tanks. Tanks don't lose a lot of manpower, so the field hospitals don't matter. Or there's the third option. Just release a puppet and use your puppet's manpower. If you're running out of manpower before you finish your first war, you've probably thrown away a whole bunch of manpower, and you need to just not do that. Unless you're playing poorly, you shouldn't need field hospitals. It's really just as simple as that. Alrighty, let's do flame tanks next. I'm going to put medium flame tanks at A tier, light flame tanks at F because they're just useless because of recent changes. And then I don't know if I want to put heavies in like C tier or B tier. I'll show you why. So if we add a light flame tank to this division, if we swap that to a medium flame tank, we're gaining bonuses against fort attack, forest, urban, jungle. Those are all great. This is with basically the cheapest medium, advanced medium you can build. You can make it cheaper just by not using the advanced medium. I just used the advanced medium for no good reason. With the light flame tank, same idea. You can make it slightly cheaper, but here's the thing. If you can afford the cost of a light flame tank, you can afford the cost of a medium flame tank. So there's no point in taking the penalty to stats. Just get the better percent stats. Plus, you can make expensive medium tanks with a bunch of stats on them. Heavy flame tanks get a reduction in most stats other than fort. River, amphibious, mountain, urban, jungle, they're worse against. But you can get fort attack. And these are expensive heavy tanks. These are advanced heavy tanks that cost 35 IC. But I'm adding nearly 40 armor there. You are going to need AT to pierce that. And that is why they are B-ish tier. You can put these guys on marines and then just have unpierceable marines and save yourself the trouble of AM tanks. Now, of course, the benefit of AM tanks is once you've landed, you still have proper tank divisions. Versus this is still just an infantry division with high armor, which is going to get pierced by any tank, which means it's just going to get pushed by any tank. But you can still do this. This is complete overkill for single player, but it's something that can really make it hard for the enemy to defend any port without just putting tanks on the port. In which case, if they're putting tanks on that port, just invade a different one. They're not going to have enough for each port. Basically, you can use heavy flame tanks as like a poor man's AM tank. I still prefer AM tanks, but like you can do it. But it gets entirely countered by the enemy just adding AT to their coastal defense. So it's not really that hard to counter though. So I'm gonna leave it at B tier. Oh, actually I put it at C tier. I'm still gonna leave it at C tier. It's fine. It's in this range here. Really, we're just splitting hairs. I had half an idea of just not even adding D tier and just going from C to F. So it's not that big of a deal. Logistics companies. I'm going to put it in B tier because it's nice to have logistics on your tanks. But at the same time, in single player, I never use logistics companies. I just grind organizer on my field marshal and then I'm good. If you're playing multiplayer, obviously you're going to need these on your tanks, maybe on your infantry, depending on where you're fighting. But I often find with the current supply system, I'm either within range of a supply hub and I have supply, or I'm not within range of a supply hub and I don't have supply. And logistics companies don't do anything for that, so it's not really that big of a deal. Okay, so let's do maintenance companies and MPs. Let's just put them both in D tier. I mean, MPs, they technically do provide defense and soft attack. You could theoretically put them in your coastal defense divisions if you have excess infantry equipment and support equipment at the cost of a little bit of org, but they're not that good combat-wise. They are kind of good for your garrisons. They are really a long-term thing. They're very expensive XP wise because you either need to spend 35 XP getting the proper heritage and then 35 XP swapping off to something useful to make it worthwhile using MPs, because MPs work best when you're using the largest division you have. If you're using a 2-width cav, you shouldn't put MPs on it because that's just substantially increasing the cost. Signal companies, also D tier. They are extremely niche. They are basically only useful for defending against naval invasions and for naval invasions. They can be useful on marines to prevent you from getting reinforced memed when you throw like 10 30-widths instead of single tile and you're trying to cycle those divisions. Signal companies, the initiative increases your reinforce rate. The coordination bonus from signal companies are largely worthless. It's negligible, really doesn't matter. Rocket artillery, I'm probably going to put in C tier, not because rocket artillery is bad, but it's 1941 tech, and you have to do a 1941 tech to get to it. And then you have to put it into production and get enough to actually add it. And it's a lot of research for a little bit of a benefit. I mean, it's about 25 soft attack unless you've gone superior firepower. It's not bad, but there are actually instances where signal companies are better than them. If you're using large divisions and battle planning, signal companies are actually better. 15 4s with signal companies take less losses battle planning than 15 4s with rocket artillery. Same goes for 9 and 3s. 9 and 3s actually do better battle planning with signal companies than they do with rocket artillery because of the reinforce rate. They're not really that vital. You can get away with never building support rocket artillery. Honestly, I don't really ever do it. You really only need them if you're doing 10 widths, and really you could just build tanks instead. And then there's support anti-tank. In single player, it's like basically C to D tier because like the AI hardly ever builds tanks unless you're going up against Germany. In multiplayer, because of the meta for medium tanks, most medium tank builds, you'll see them do something like, they'll take either the improved or the basic chassis, and if they're going mobile warfare, you'll see them not even put a point into armor. They'll just slap the improved medium cannon on it. Maybe they put the radio on it, maybe they don't, and then they don't put points into armor. They don't use anything better than riveted. They don't put on armor skirts or sloped armor. So they do this, and then maybe they stack a stabilizer and a secondary turret if they want to build quality mediums, something to this effect. Maybe they put additional machine guns across the top. It doesn't matter. The key is they're not putting armor on it. Or maybe they don't go above 4 because 4 costs a steel. With just that, you're looking at 43.7 armor. I didn't put on mechanized. Let's put on the mechanized. Mech 2, 46.7 armor. We just take this, support AT2. We'll pierce that with ease. So AT2 can have a lot of value in certain circumstances and not a lot in others. If you're even in single player, if you're going up against Germany, you're going to need AT to pierce. Or if you're getting into the late game, you're going to need AT to pierce. Really, support AT does have a decent amount of value. It's just kind of expensive, which is why people don't tend to use it. But I think it firmly belongs in B tier. There are definitely instances where you'd heavily benefit from using AT. Anyways, this is the tier list. Maybe we put this one up here and this one up here, and maybe we swap that one down there. Maybe that's what you feel like doing. But remember, you're not doing this for the recon value, you're doing it for the stats of the tank. Recon itself is largely worthless. And if you're going for flame tanks, you likely should be going for mediums, not heavies. But overall, this is really how they kind of belong. Going from the things you're almost always going to use, especially in single player. These guys are a little different, like flame tanks have no use in planes. So if you're fighting in North Africa, there's no point in putting flame tank on it, it's just a waste of equipment. B and C, you're looking at your situational support companies. D is niche, very niche, and then F is just useless. Don't bother. Like I said, if you can afford a light flame tank, you can afford a medium flame tank. So you might as well just get the better bonuses. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.